Hello everyone, I'm Chris from Rusted Rabbit and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to go over some tips and tricks for breeding your rabbits. If you're new to it, or even if you've been doing it a while and you have some trouble, here's some good best practices that are going to help you go through it. Okay, so for the first tip, what should we do?
Breed 2 rabbits at a time.
2 at a time. So what I like to do is 2 or 3 at a time at least, 2 or 3 does at a time. Now I mean all in the same cage, I mean the same day or within a day or two of each other. And what that allows you to do, you can foster. So if you have, basically you have a bad mom and she's not feeding her babies, or she's just, not a good mom, you can take those babies and redistribute them with some of the better moms. Or if there's a disparity in litter size, so one has 12 in a litter and the other one has 3. Okay, so you can kind of break them up and even them out so that you don't have one working too hard to try and feed everybody and one with plenty of milk to spare. Okay, so for tip number 2.
Wait.
Okay, so for tip number 2, what do we do?
Spotting the bad moms.
Spotting the bad moms. Okay, so obviously we want good moms. What does that mean? What does a bad one look like? So we got to spot the bad moms, and so what are we looking for? So sometimes you'll have moms, they'll have all their babies right on the cage wire, even though there's a nest box in there where they can put them in there and take care of them and they'll stay warm. They have them right on the cage wire. That's not good. You don't want that. Also what you'll find is when you're checking on the babies every day, you want to look if they're being fed properly, it'll look like they swallowed a ping pong ball, right? Their tummies will be round and kind of firm, and they'll be full of milk, okay? If they start to look kind of thinned out, or the ribs start to kind of show and they look emaciated, that means they're not getting fed, okay? That's a bad mom type of deal. Also, whenever they're preparing their nest box, a lot of times, some of the bad moms, they won't pull their hair, they won't prep the nest box, they won't do any of the stuff they're supposed to do, that nature tells them they should do. Now, a lot of times, you'll have an anomaly for a first-timer, right? So if it's a first-time mom, she might have her babies on the cage wire, she may not know what she's doing, sometimes she's scared, and it takes some getting used to. So I usually give them a pass for the first litter. And when they get to the second or third litter, if they haven't figured it out by then, it's time to call them and label them a bad mom. Okay, so for tip number 3, what do we got?
Check the babies.
Check the babies. You want to make sure you're checking the babies every day, okay? And what are you checking them for? Well, one, like we mentioned, you got to make sure they're getting fed. You'll know pretty quickly if they're not getting fed, because they'll start to really kind of shrink up and they'll look hungry, okay? But what you're checking for mostly is any dead babies, okay? Because every once in a while, something will happen. Either it's not getting fed, or maybe it gets squished when the mom's jumping in and out and she squashes it, or it's sickly. Whatever the reason, you're going to have some mortality. That's going to happen. So you want to check the nest boxes every day and check for any dead babies. Remove any of the dead kits and get rid of them. Because if you don't, a couple of different things will happen. One, if you have a really good mom, she'll actually eat the baby because she doesn't want that smell of death in the air, which brings predators in, and then then you've compromised the entire family. So she'll eat it to get rid of it, okay? But if you pull it and get rid of it, she doesn't have to worry about that, all right? Also, but if she doesn't do that, then you have a couple different things. One, you have a dead animal, starting to rot with all the other babies around, and they can get sick, or it'll bring in ants, okay? And if it brings in ants, then you'll have all the healthy babies getting eaten alive by ants or bit, and then the mom, if she gets bit, she's not going to want to go in there and feed everybody, so they might end up actually starving because the ants are in there from the dead ones. So you want to make sure you're removing the dead ones. Also, what you're doing is you're inspecting to see, sometimes, especially if you have a big litter, they'll kind of break into groups. Okay, you'll have one little group in the back, one little group in the front. And the danger in that is, one, if it's really cold outside, they rely on each other for body heat to kind of keep all the heat in. And secondly, if the mom jumps in to feed them, she might accidentally be feeding one group and not the other. So you want to make sure everybody's getting fed. So what you'd like to do is bring everybody back together into one big group. Okay, so next tip.
Don't give the mom the box too early.
That's right, the nest box. When you want to give her a nest box to have the babies in, you don't want to do that too early. Basically, after you've bred the doe, typically, by and large, 31 days is going to be how long it takes to have, to kindle. I would not give her a nest box anytime before 28 days after breeding. Otherwise, it turns into a giant bathroom. Okay, she's gonna jump in there. She's gonna pee in it. She's gonna poop in it. She's gonna make a mess of it. She might even, take all the hay out. She's gonna fumble around. And so when it's time to have babies, if she jumps back in, you haven't had to, clean it out. Then she's just gonna have babies on top of all that poop, and that's no good. Okay, so Noah's gonna give us tip number 5.
Give the mom lots of food.
Lots of food. So we feed our rabbits every day. You should be anyway. And you give them, a certain amount. Otherwise, they're going to get fat and lazy, and they won't, want to breed or do anything. But if they're nursing, okay, she's got to have enough energy to keep herself going and to make milk for her babies. So really, when they have babies and they're nursing, I like to free feed them, give them as much as they want. There's no need for them to be hungry while they're trying to be a mom as well. Okay, so Everett is going to give us tip number 6.
Maintain situational awareness.
Okay, maintain situational awareness. That was really close. So basically, what you need to understand is every rabbit, you get to know your rabbits, okay? They have personalities a little bit. They're all different. They act like a certain way. And so you'll understand a behavior of a particular rabbit. She's, either really friendly or really aggressive or really something. And if something's out of whack and it's not normal, it's not consistent, then that should be a flag. It should be something you need to look into, okay? So figure it out. A lot of them, they'll actually stop eating like 2-3 days before they're about to have, kindle. And so then okay, it's coming. That's normal behavior for her. Other ones, they'll eat up right to the minute they're having babies. So you just need to pay attention. One of the things, to pay attention to, as far as situational awareness goes, is if they stop eating, like just period, they stop eating, that's not normal, right? So either it's a behavior that this rabbit does before she has babies, or something else that you could find is if they get dehydrated, they won't eat, okay? So you can test all the water nipples and find out, like, hey, I spot check them, and it's like, hey, they all work, and for some reason she's not eating, and then I go to test hers, and it's not working, and it's like, oh, okay, so if you're just maintaining situational awareness, that'll help you sometimes find there's a problem somewhere. And obviously, if they're thirsty, if they're dehydrated, not only they're not eating, they're definitely not going to be getting pregnant. So if you want to be breeding your rabbits, you need to make sure they're healthy. You need to make sure they're getting all the water and food they need. Okay, one of my last tips, and something that's going to be really of particular attention to certain people. It looks really easy on YouTube, breeding rabbits, the actual breeding process. They breed like rabbits, right? It's very counterintuitive to think you'd have frustrations breeding the rabbits, but that does happen, and more often than you would think. Okay, I've heard of people, using the moon phases to figure it out, the time of year, checking the privates for, color, whether it be pink or purple, whatever it needs to be. But the bottom line is if the doe is too young, it's not going to happen. If the doe is too old, it's not going to happen. So if it's the proper age, breeding age, it's going to really be any time of year. It should be fine. So it's a matter of figuring out why is she not breeding. Okay, sometimes the doe refuses to lift. And so I hear that a lot, but I was, always kind of like, ashamed to ask what that meant until I actually understood it by seeing what that actually means. When she's all splayed out and laying down and he's behind her going to town, you think, okay, well, that should work. But in order for their gear to line up for him to have access, she has to physically lift her bottom and lift her tail. And so that's what everyone says when they say, oh, she has to lift. That's what it means, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so you can see as soon as she lifts up, he'll have access, he'll make a connection, and then he'll fall off, like literally fall off, okay? Otherwise, he's just going to be going to town and trying his best and wear himself out. And you can let him go for as long as you want. He'll stop, run around the cage, sniff her ear, do whatever and try again. But until she lifts, he's just going to wear himself out and then he'll be out of breath, okay? She might be in a corner, huddled up or like sitting up, not splayed out. You just kind of have to help, manually move her to where she needs to be, and at some point she's gonna have to take it, the rest of the way and actually lift her bottom. Okay, so when it comes to breeding, it's just really important. Don't get frustrated. Okay. Typically, what I do is I'll bring a doe, put her in the buck's cage, let him have a try. I might reposition her, manually and see if that'll work. But basically, I'm not going to waste a bunch of time. If she hasn't, if they haven't figured it out in the first 5 minutes, it's probably not going to happen, or the probability goes way down from there on that particular incident. So I really don't spend any more than 5 minutes with a doe in a cage if it hasn't happened yet. So if that doesn't happen, then I will relocate her, put her in a different cage with a different buck, and give him a shot. If she's just still refusing to lift, then what that means is it's time to just put her back in her own cage, give up for the day, or at least for the moment. And I usually try the next day, and that's sometimes enough. Okay. You want to also track, keep records on which buck, for successful breedings, which buck hooked up with that particular doe, because if it's a personality thing, she likes that one and not that one, then let's go ahead. If we have records on it, we know that she hooked up with him. So the next time I start with that one and move around if you need to, but usually you don't need to. If you just have a very uncooperative, very stubborn doe that just refuses to breed, there's two solutions. One, if you have a pretty big operation and you have sort of a regulated breeding schedule, you can move into artificial insemination. Then you need semen extender, a few different things, and some specialized practice to get that going. But the other option, if you have a small batch farm or something in your backyard for your own consumption, then more likely than not, you're not doing AI. So really, the only other thing you can do for a stubborn doe is freezer club intervention. That's what I like to call it. It's time for her to retire and become a meal, because basically she's livestock. She is not a pet. Okay, and as soon as they're not contributing to the operation, that means you're just donating food to them, and it's just going to frustrate you. So that's all you need to do. Okay, y'all. Well, that's it. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, we answered some questions for you. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Or if you have any ideas for videos or anything, we'll cover it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Other than that, notification bell. I don't know what that means. But hey, y'all have a great day. We love you. God bless.